Let everyone know they're being recorded. Okay, the recording has started. Okay. So this is today's agenda. We're going to start with some anniversaries and retirements. I have never done this before, but last fall I got a couple people told me about staff members they had who are reaching kind of key anniversaries or people who had been retired, and I thought it might be nice to acknowledge people on a webinar. So that's how I'll start. And then I will turn it over to Mary, who will lead a panel discussing building and maintaining Title I partnerships, which will be the bulk of the presentation. And I'm sure it'll be very, very uh, informative for all of us. Then after they're done, I'm going to talk a little bit about incentive funds, background on how it was calculated, and then how you're going to handle the funding adjustments. So those of you who don't have to deal with things like budgets and e-grants can get off. It may go past 12 noon, which is why we moved the panel discussion first so that they would have as much time as they needed. But I will be covering some incentive funds items for those of you who want to stay on. And then there'll just be a slide about the next webinar. Okay, so about a week ago, I went into the Access template and I looked at staff who have been entered into eData and, you know, filtered people by start date before January 1st, 2004, which would be people who have been in adult education for 20 years or more. And I found 154 staff who have 20 plus years in adult education or family literacy that may or may not be within our system. They may have come from other states or things like that, but I think that's pretty great. 44 of those are volunteers with 20 or more years in adult education. Now, I'm going to throw in Amanda being the state director and asking for data correct accuracy. 12 of the individuals who have 20 plus years based on their adult ed start date have their adult education experience marked in eData as less than 1 year or 1 to 3 years. So obviously that is incorrect data. So I would say to those of you who are the data quality specialists, please jump in and kind of double check that to make sure that the individuals who are in staff have the correct selection for 1 year, 1 to 3 years, or 3 or more years. That is actually a data element that we use to report to the Fed. So just going to go through. We've got the names of some people who have, really put in a lot of years, and these are names that were shared to me by program administrators. So if you're not on the list, I'm sorry. It doesn't mean I don't appreciate all the work that you've done. It just means I wasn't given your name as being allowed to publicly recognize you. So Karen Hamilton from Delaware County Literacy Council has been in adult education for 39 years. Peggy Trout has been here for 27 years. Karen Allenbaugh, who you will hear from today, has been in adult education for 27 years and has been a program administrator at her agency for 20. Lori Como is celebrating 25 years today, is my understanding. Art Covert is 25 years. Isabella Dobronska, I apologize if I mispronounced that, is 24 years. Joyce Chester has 22 years. I'm sure many of you have heard that she is leaving Chester County OIC and moving to be an executive director of another nonprofit in Chester County. So congratulations, Joyce. We will miss your services. Tracy Bank, who's also at Huntington, has 16 years. Deb Charlie has 15. And then we had two retirements that were reported to me that kind of happened in the last 6 months or so. Marilyn Leidick from Lancaster 11 and IU 13 retired in June after 25 years, and Kim Topper from IU 12 retired earlier this month after 21 years.
Just trying to remember to tell everybody.
Yeah, sorry. Please make sure you,
meetings, but they usually have them on.
sorry, thank you. And I had fun finding a slide transition. Okay, Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amanda. And just as a reminder, if you can remain on mute, that will be great as we are facilitating this panel discussion. And so I have the pleasure of introducing three amazing administrators who will be answering some prescribed questions in regards to building and maintaining Title I partnerships. I am going to ask the panelists just to jump on camera, just so everyone can see your beautiful faces, and they can know who is actually speaking when providing responses to the prescribed questions. And so I'd like to introduce panelist Carol Allenbaugh, Hennepin County Child and Adult Development Corporation, Kelly O. Davis, Seneca IU9, and Andrea Sheasley, Aaron IU 28. And sorry, I do have a Philadelphia accent, so you do hear that as I'm pronouncing your name. So again, welcome as panelists for this discussion. And so do you all just mind just coming off the mic or unmuting yourself and just saying hello to your fellow colleagues?
Good morning. Good morning from Huntington County.
Good morning from Aaron Intermediate Unit.
Good morning from cold Seneca Highlands IU9.
Thank you so much. Amanda, can you advance to the next slide, please? Okay, so we're just going to do a simple round robin with the 4 questions that will be asked of the panelists. And if I can just ask the panelists to maybe keep your responses to maybe 3 or 4 minutes. We do want to have some time for possible questions from your colleagues. And again, we want to make some additional time for the remainder of the webinar. So question 1. Describe the Title I partners your agency collaborates with and the roles your agency and partners fulfill to provide supportive services and meet shared outcomes. So I'm actually going to start with Kelly, if you can provide your answer to this.
Sure, absolutely. So in our area, we have one contractor, and it's Equus Workforce Solutions that provides all the Title I services. They provide WIOA adult, dislocated worker, and youth programs, and they also hold an earned contract to serve certain individuals that get TANF and SNAP and certain programs through the County Assistance Office. All of the Title I staff in our area are housed at the PA Career Link, and our Title I staff are co-located at 5 of the 7 career links in our region. So collaboration is really a natural result of that co-location. It does look a little different depending on the career link and the partners involved, but the main theme is just constant communication centered around how we can work together to help the students meet their goals. Of course, case management is huge as we work with students on some of the barriers they have. First of all, to class attendance, we have to get them there. And so some of the supportive services that Title I provides are mileage, which is a really big issue in a rural area. As you can imagine, a lot of these folks live a good distance away from a career link, so mileage is really important to them. Transportation, help with that as well. Title I can reimburse for high school equivalency testing fees. They give a monetary incentive after the students test, and just things that help reward the students for achieving their goals. Title I also puts together a monthly calendar of events, with a variety of events, but just a few of the highlights are resume workshops, budgeting workshops, interviewing skills. They do a virtual job club, and our students attend many of these because almost all of them are dual enrolled in Title I and Title II. And then, of course, Title I provides the work experiences that our students can take advantage of. As far as meeting shared outcomes, in the centers where our staff is co-located, there's daily communication about referrals to and from Title I. Scheduling TABE, which our staff does for all the career links in the region, scheduling orientation, and then once a person enrolls in Title II, they would discuss class attendance, progress toward meeting goals for high school equivalency, post-secondary, and employment. Title II lets the Title I staff know if the student is coming to class, how they're progressing. We let them know when a student is ready to post-test and communicate the results to them. And the same is true for their services. The Title I staff communicate to our staff whatever supportive services they're able to provide for the students. So I talked a lot about the places where we're co-located, but in one career link where we're not co-located, our staff goes over every Friday and does TABE at the career link. So when she's there, then she has the opportunity to discuss with the Title I staff potential referrals or following up with any dual enrolled students. So I think that co-location makes collaboration easier, of course, but regardless of location, just keeping that communication open between Title II and the other partners, whether it's in person or phone or texting or email, it's really the key to making sure that our students are successful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to move on to Andrea.
Hi, a lot of what Kelly said, we do a lot of the same things. We are located in both of our career links in both Armstrong and Indiana County. So we partner with, our career tracks agencies. When we first started our WIB, there was a need from the vice president at the time had reached out to us regarding the classes for our youth. He said, we provide in addition to what they already provided, they wanted more classes just for their students. So we had this at that time, had the students attend all full day classes twice a week, and the students received a stipend. Through the years, that has morphed into having an afternoon class that we work with the students on that. Working with the dislocated workers and youth, they help provide payment for testing, stipend for the attendance, monetary incentive again for passing, provide bus passes in our Indiana County area with their local. And then during COVID, they had paid for online classes. As for meeting shared outcomes, we have daily communication, which is really nice. Like Kelly had said, being located right in the career links, we can take that student and go over to one of our partners and introduce them and have a nice handoff with the student and the the department of that we're going through providing them to. We provide communication, so it's open communication all the time. We talk about their EFL gains, any skill gains and credentials that they are looking for. So it's basically, like I said, we're just having that shared community involved, community place, so where we have office space and desk space, everyone's working together, and communication is on a daily basis, which has been very helpful.
Thanks, Andrea. And Carol?
Sure. We partner with Employment and Training in Huntington County. They're the Title I agency in both Huntington and Fulton counties. We're very fortunate to be co-located in both career links. 2 of our 4 classes are in career link. And as you could see earlier, our team has been together for 20 plus years. So that makes this partnership very strong and helps us to operate effectively. A lot like the other 2 persons that went before me had said, we collaborate with testing. Our Title I partner does all of their testing before they send the referrals over. I'm trying to find something that they didn't say, and it sounds like they hit on about every one of my points. They have the same supportive services for youth and adult dislocated workers. They pay for the cost of the assessment. They work in concert with our Title II adult educators to cover the cost of the retake for assessments if needed. They also coordinate the Title I counselors for transitional work experience. The counselors coordinate with host work sites to make sure that the student can come to class, and they can also go to the different trainings that CareerLink has in the afternoons. That's about it. It sounds like we're all doing about the same thing, which is wonderful.
Thank you so much. And it does sound similar in so many ways. So thank you for all three of you for providing such a thorough response to this question. And to the field as they are speaking, if something comes to your mind, a question that comes to your mind, please feel free to also put it in the chat. Okay, question number 2. How do you ensure your Title I partners are fully informed of the services you provide as a Title II service provider? What meetings do you participate in? How often, and what are the scope of what is the scope of the meetings? So I think all three of you touched a little bit on this question, but if you can just elaborate some additional information. And I am going to start with Carol this time.
Sure. As I said, our adult education classrooms are co-located in the Huntington and Fulton office. The leadership within the Title I program also ensures that all of our staff are invited to attend the CareerLink regional trainings when they're offered. The Title I staff participate yearly in the NRS Measuring Performance Under WIOA courses as part of their professional development plans, which really makes a big difference because we understand what each other does. The leadership from Title I and Title II meet monthly with the instructors and the student support coordinator for our monthly staff meetings, and also Barb, which is the employment and training director, sits on our quarterly PIT team meetings. We have veteran staff that understand all of the Title II program requirements, and all staff participate in policy and procedure training when necessary. For example, recently Barb completed a training on the digital intake that's happening with CareerLink with all the Title II staff that are not just located in the CareerLink, but are those staff like myself that may come in and out of the CareerLink, so we could better understand it. Our co-located staff that are in the CareerLink participate in team building activities when they're offered at the CareerLink. Barb tries to do that once a month, so that's pretty exciting. Also, something we have had veteran staff for. I think our last staff person that left had been here for over 15 years. So last year we had to work on onboarding of new instructors. So when new staff are hired, as part of their onboarding, they meet with the Title I director and the career counselors as part of this process. Also, staff are encouraged to take the What Can CareerLink Do For You, so that they're aware of all the programs available through both Title I and the CareerLink. I think that makes it more seamless. I am a member of the business service team that meets monthly and the CareerLink management team that meets quarterly. When you had said what's the scope of the meeting, management team, we share program information with all the CareerLink partners, OBR, Adult Ed, Department of Human Service, Title I, the site administrator. We talk about the operating budget, Department of Labor and Industry, operating budgets, health and safety information, and we share performance information, upcoming training, program changes. Just attended the business service team meeting yesterday. We share trends and labor market information, upcoming job fairs and recruitment of local employers and outreach. Also, the Title I staff are trained on the TABE and the locator and the importance of those. They're proctors. Trying to look down through here to see if I have anything. Oh, the staff, we make sure that they're all fully aware of all the goals of each one of the programs and the importance of partnering. We also keep in the main center of everything that we do, what is best for the customer. You know, we succeed together, we fail together. So we always look for additional training opportunities as needed that we can do with both Title I and Title II staff. And we also look at regular program improvement meetings that we can participate in.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carol.
You're
And continue to add to the field, continue to add your questions to the chat. We'll go through them at the end of this discussion. And can I ask Andrea to provide a response to question 2?
Sure. Basically, a lot of what Carol had said as well. We are in the same buildings as we had mentioned earlier. Our staff attends the Career Link meetings that are in person or when they're offered online. I attend the quarterly partner and operators meetings. Again, we share program updates, the trends, what we're looking, if there's an issue with something or we're seeing more ESL students, we talk about that and how we can all partner together. Our executive director here at the IU attends the WIB meetings on a quarterly basis, and then I give those updates to her to share. We also, the partners all share what they're doing. If they have questions, whether it be employment or what the students are doing, we share all of that information. We schedule on the CWDS. We have our students help with that. We help our students so that they're scheduling on the CWDS system. We schedule our testing. We're a testing site for HiSET, so we schedule those testing at the Career Link to use our shared space. And then when we do have orientation, the VP, which is our Title I person, he will come in and provide a presentation as well, along with some information of what what they can provide to help the student, and then also to demonstrate that we're as a team and we're working together to help support them. And then if there's questions with a student, we just walk right down to their office and talk with them about the student and the student's goals and how we can work together to achieve. If the student, it's very nice if we have a student that is not coming to class or not doing their work, that we can work together and sit with the student and demonstrate we're here to help support you, what do you need, and the student sees that we are working together to help them, and we've had student success from there. So basically, like I said, same thing, a lot of things that Carol is doing, we're doing as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And Kelly?
I think I could probably say ditto too, but I'll add a few more things. Again, co-location helps because we quite literally see and hear what partners are doing every day. They hear us talking to students, they hear us teaching, we see them. So that really helps, I think, with them understanding what it is that we do. But some more formal things. Prior to COVID, we held a region-wide all staff meeting once a year where we did cross-training and really got into the nitty-gritty of what each partner does. And that's something that is being brought back this year. We're really happy about that. That will be held again in April. So it's just a really good time for frontline staff as well as supervisors. And this year we're holding it right after a workforce development board meeting. So hopefully some of the WIB members will stay, WDB members will stay and spend some time getting to know each other's programs. So as we all know, one of our requirements is that if we don't have staff located in a Career Link, we have to train other staff in the Career Link on Title II services. So formally, I do that annually for the workforce navigators, and those are the first people that the customers see when they walk in the door. So right away, if they say anything that would trigger, oh, they need Title II, they would get referred to us right away. Our staff are involved in a lot of the same meetings you all talked about already. They attend staff meetings, whether they're co-located or not. They serve on the job seeker teams and business services teams, so they have a really great opportunity to share our services with each other. In one of our Career Links, the staff kind of takes it upon themselves to have a morning meeting once a week just to touch base and discuss what's going on that week with our students. Scheduling different workshops or things that are happening. And when there are new employees in Title I or really any partner, our staff spend time talking with them about Title II, doing some cross training, daily one-on-one conversations with Title I staff about our services, what we can do, what we need as far as enrollment and EFLs. We sort of continue to fight that you only need 12 hours fight. by constantly reminding partners that students need that to be considered enrolled, but they need much more than that to get an EFL gain. And we just try to stress it's not just about hours, but making sure that they're really learning what they need in order to help them for whatever it is that's next for that customer. Title I and Title II staff attend a lot of meetings together outside of the CareerLink. They attend the Criminal Justice Advisory Boards, the CJAB, with our Title I partners. They talk about our services. We do outreach events together with Title I and other partners. So they're constantly hearing about our services as well as us hearing about theirs. A lot of those meetings are done quarterly. On a monthly basis, Title I has a connection cafe at our career links, and this is really just an informal time where Title I and Title II staff get together with customers and just spend time building relationships. They might work on an activity like a word cloud for goal setting, talk through their goals, or it might be focused on interviewing skills. And I think this kind of informal meeting really leads to students interacting and talking with each other, and then building those relationships really helps with retention in both of our programs. As far as what I do, I serve on the Workforce Development Board. I'm on the executive committee. I also serve on the local management committee, and I'm a part of the operator consortium. So just constantly sharing and promoting the work of Title II and our role in the workforce system.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I heard a lot of, since question one, a lot of communications that's going on between both the Title I and Title II providers, additional meetings, trying to meet the needs of the students, and also cross-training, which is very important. So Amanda, can you advance to the next slide, please?
I think there were a couple questions in the chat. So
Okay. Should we address them now?
yeah.
Okay, sure.
And some of this may be more a case of saying you really need to reach out to the Title I providers or your local one-stop operator in your local area, versus having our colleagues here answer the questions. But the first one is, can you say more about financial support to students such as travel? Would Title I also provide technology funds for students to attend remote classes? I don't know if any of the panelists feel comfortable addressing that or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can answer that. I think maybe not extremely well, but in our career links, we have had some funds to purchase devices for students, and we can do that as well. So I think that there's help there for devices. I really can't speak to service. Maybe somebody else could speak to that, but definitely the devices would be something that we would be able to provide one way or the other through our career link.
I can share a little bit of that too. We have loaner laptops that we use to provide for the students that need them. We have given some of those out, and then whenever they no longer need them, they do give them back. Our area, probably just like IU9, is very rural. We have some places that does not have internet access, or it's very, very limited. So that's sometimes very difficult to use. But if there is an area that we have, online or internet service, we do help provide the students that need those computers.
That's us as well here in Huntington and Fulton County. We have lender laptops when they become a student, and we also have burner phones that we use as hotspots. I shouldn't call them burner phones, but the phones that we can use as hotspots for those families that we weren't able to help get internet, or they don't have internet access where they might be. And just as I believe Kelly said, they give the laptops back or the tablets back whenever they're done, and they go back to Title I.
And then the second question was, do you think that when Title I programs provide monetary incentive to attend class, it improves student persistence? Don't know if any of you have any comments on that.
Yes, we have seen that here at the IU at Aaron. We've seen that students, when they feel that they're getting paid, which is really sad, but when they get paid, it does improve their attendance, it improves their test scores, because there's an incentive for them to come, and so we actually do see that.
Here in Huntington County, we see that more with the youth whenever they have their incentives within their programs. But it's also something that our student support coordinator can remind them of. You know, whenever you get through this process, here's the stipend that you'll get, or here's what's waiting for you. So sometimes it does help with persistence, but I don't know that it helps every time.
Okay, and then the second question was around using CASAS. So I believe in the Philadelphia area they use CASAS, and there was a response that in the Westmoreland, Fayette, and Southwest corner they're using CASAS. So it does sound like there's um, some local areas. I'm going to go on to the next slide. I saw that there was an additional question, but I'm going to, I think it's a broader question, so I'm going to let the panelists continue.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So question 3, describe the referral process. On average, how many referrals do you receive from your Title I partners for Title II services per year? How many referrals do you make to your partners? So I am going to start with Kelly.
Okay, so referrals to and from Title I are done the same way for us, depending on the career link. Because our career links are very small, in-person is a popular referral method wherever the staff is co-located. Where we're not, it would be done through email or phone call. So in person, the Title I and Title II often do orientations together. So that lends itself really well to a referral. It can be made right away. When they can't do it together, the Title I staff that's doing orientation would do the referral to our program right after. And again, it may be that where they walk them over to the Title II teacher if she happens to be there that day and say, hey, do you have some time to talk to this person? Or it might be done through an email. So referrals that can't be done in person are either done, like I said, through email or phone call. Some career links use the CWDS, which all of our staff has access to. Again, that depends on the career link because some of them don't use the referral system as much as others. That's a little bit inconsistent, but often one of the most effective referral methods is that once Title I determines that a referral needs to be made to us, like I said earlier, the staff literally walks them over and says to our teacher, do you have time to talk to this student? And we like this method because then you're putting a face with a name. It's not like they're referring to somebody that they've never met. They meet the person right away. And referrals to Title I are almost always done in person because the Title I staff is in the career link. They're there all the time. They can just walk them over, and because it's a smaller career link, we can do it that way. As far as how many referrals we receive from Title I, we really thought a lot about this, and it really varies from year to year. But when we think about overall, about 75% of our referrals come from Title I. It depends on the location. It depends on the year. We have some years where we don't have as many from our partners. We have more that come from the outside, but overall about 75% of them come from Title I. And as far as how many referrals we make to Title I, for the students who aren't referred to us already by Title I, we refer almost all of them to Title I. My staff had a very hard time thinking about any one that they would not refer to Title I. So they just couldn't think of a reason why they wouldn't refer somebody to Title I. So they said that almost all of them are referred to Title I.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Carol?
Sure. We're very similar there with our referrals received and referrals made. I'll start right there. We usually on a year, we have about 50% of our referrals received from Title I. And as Kelly just said, we try to refer all of our students during the orientation process with our student support coordinator. When he goes over the student handbook, he discusses all of the Title I programs, and he follows through with the instructor as the students continue in class on their career path, and continues with that referral process. For our referral process, when they come in for HSE to Title I and they're referred right away, they go to the student support coordinator, and he gets them scheduled in for orientation, and then scheduled in with the teacher for intake and when to begin class. As Kelly said, sometimes they can just walk right over to the classroom whenever we're co-located, but if it's one of our satellite classrooms, then the referral's done through either email or CWDS. If it's someone coming in that needs remedial help that's going on for training, after their career scopes can complete, then they do the referral to our program. They send the release of information and the referral and all of the information needed, and then the instructor meets with the student support coordinator. They set up a plan. We try to make sure that if it's at any of our centers, when they get a referral, that they reach out to that student, potential student, that day or first thing the next day. We don't let that go for past the day, if at all possible, unless it's a weekend. But we try to be in communication with that student right away to get them scheduled into class. The instructor communicates with the Title I counselor and the student support coordinator on at least a minimum of a weekly basis regarding the student. Sometimes they email back and forth. If something happens that the student doesn't show up for the orientation and intake, or they're not coming to class, they're communicating that right away. So someone's in touch with that student so that we don't let that go very long. Sometimes when students come in from Title I, they're in a quick turnaround to get that remedial service. So we try to talk to them about what it's a partnership. We need them to commit to class for, at the very minimum, 3 weeks or 15 hours before they can post-test, and we can send them back to Title II or Title I. Usually it's longer, but sometimes if they're wanting to go to that CDL class or CNA and it's starting quicker, there's a pretty quick turnaround. I think that we were able to hire a full-time student support coordinator, I'm sorry, I'm going to start over. Full-time student support coordinator, assessment administrator. And he actually, when he came in, he was able to see that we did this process very well, but we didn't have a formal process written down. So he wrote our, it's like a point of contact with Title I that we call the procedure. And it starts out with the referral process from Title I to Title II and what our orientation and intake and everything looks like. And I can share that if anybody wants that. But it has been very helpful with us.
And so, Carol, on average, how many referrals do you receive from your Title I partners?
About 50% of our clients are from Title I. This year so far, we're at 32% of clients.
Okay. And how many referrals would you say you make to Title I?
So far this year, I would say probably about 25% of our students we have followed through with a referral. As Kelly said, we try to refer all of our students, but those that actually made the referral, about 25%.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And Andrea?
Hi, yes. We have orientation that is monthly in both areas in Armstrong and Indiana. We do them separately. We talk with the students. Of course, we walk them down, like I had mentioned before, to the person that that we need to take them to, so they have that personal connection. All of our staff is trained to refer to Title I whenever that student that qualifies for that certain program. Our referrals actually vary from year to year. I think this year we have from referrals received from our Title I partners is between around 50%. Sometimes it goes up to about 75%. And then our referrals that we make roughly, I was just thinking of that a little bit more, around 25 to 30% to those that qualify, and then they, excuse me, I'm sorry, then they will, follow through about 25%. Our orientations are usually, they are in person, that we do have, and it's ongoing, revolving. And then we do have, of course, if Title I refers a student that needs to come, start right away, we work with that student on, getting that student orientated to our classes. That's that's about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Amanda, I'm just going to jump into the chat for just a second. Susan, I see that you have a longer question, and Rachel, I'm actually, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the discussion, but there is a particular question to the responses the panel just provided for question 3. It says, at what NRS level are those students coming into your classes at who only staff for 15 hours? I think this is specifically for Carol, when you discussed the quick turnaround for the Title I, or only stay. Yeah, I should have caught that. Sorry.
That's all right.
Only stay for 15 hours.
Whenever they're a Title I customer, they have to score a minimum of 577 on the math skills level using the TABE 1112 M math assessment, and a minimum reading level of using the M locator for TABE. I'm not sure. I would have to look to see. You sort of caught me off guard there with NRS level. But a lot of them, when they're coming in, they may be at a 545 or 544. Let me look at that and I'll get right back to you.
And also, we will be sharing the panelists' contact information at the end. So if anyone has some follow-up questions, you can feel free to reach out to them. And also, there was a comment from Dawn Hannah, who is expressing that there are a lot of great ideas shared here, and thank you. And so we're going to move on.
Mary, I'm going to do a quick jump in and
yeah, sure.
Maybe Carol said this and I missed it. Carol, you talked a lot about TABE scores, but not everybody uses TABE. So kind of what ABE levels would those students be? I mean, are those ABE level 3, ABA level 4? Do you know?
We usually look at, whenever they come in, they have to be at an ABE level 8, like an 8th grade level.
Okay, so like that would be ABE level 4, probably. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to move on to our last question for the discussion. And I think all of you may have touched in some way on this question already, but again, if you can just elaborate some more. So what are some ways you maintain productive relationships with your Title I partners? So I'm going to start with Kelly.
Okay, so I think you're right. Constant communication, I think, has been the theme throughout this whole conversation today. But if our staff is having trouble getting in touch with the students, they can talk to the Title I partner. They can help them get in touch. Of course, we talked earlier about the Title I that has funding that can incentivize them to attend in ways that we can't with Title II funds. One of the ways that our entire CareerLink staff is working together and building relationships is by presenting at one of our lunchtime webinars as a staff. So Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to be working on that. I believe that lunchtime webinar might be tomorrow. I could be mistaken about that. But we think that will build a healthy relationship as they work together to develop their presentation. shared stress and developing a presentation can always build relationships. But another way that we do that is by writing success stories on shared customers and presenting this information to the workforce board. And we think it's really important to celebrate and share successes. And when you take the time to sit down and write a narrative about how you work together to help this particular student reach a goal, it can be a really powerful way to maintain those relationships. And so again, just communicating, asking our partners what they need from Title II as far as helping students meet the goals. How can we help? What can we do? And because ultimately we're all working toward common goals.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Andrea?
Yes, of course, the same thing. Communication is definitely the key. Talking with everyone on a daily basis, making our presence known at the CareerLink offices. We get to know each other, especially when there's new employees. I know when I was new a few years ago, my staff took me to everybody's office, and I was able to meet them, which was really nice. And then I can go into there, and I feel very comfortable. So we're building positive interactions with them, sharing our data, that as well as they're sharing their data, sharing resources has been very helpful. We are included in any office events. So if someone's retiring or there's a holiday party or something, we're invited to attend, or a special safety meeting. We are included in that as well. And something else, of course, inviting our partners to graduation. They're very excited that they can see the students graduate as well. That we've all worked very hard, to make sure that they succeed, and it's nice to have that sharing of data and resources with everyone.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Carol?
A lot of the same things they had said. It's just constant communication, like she said, team building opportunities. Anytime we can get all of the staff together, we always, leadership encourages and supports ongoing communication and partnerships. Just letting them know we can't be territorial. We succeed together or we fail together, and we always keep the customer and the student first.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrea, Kelly, and Carol, for participating in this discussion. It seems that the information you have shared has been very beneficial to your colleagues. And so you're getting some reactions there. Amanda, can you just advance to the next slide before we jump into the chat with the question? So here is their contact information. So if you do have some additional questions that you didn't put in the chat or not going to ask during this webinar, please feel free to reach out to them. And I'm just going to go through the chat here. All right. Starting with Susan, I'm going to go to your question. It seems like you have great relationships with your Title I partners. Did it take time to build these? Sometimes I feel our partnerships are one-sided. Title I gets to check their boxes and meet performance benchmarks, but we lose students after they have been accomplished before students reach recommended assessment hours for Title II post-testing. Can Carol, Andrea, or Kelly speak to that?
Sure, I'll start. Yes, we do have great relationships. However, yeah, it did take a really long time to build them. I mean, I've been doing this for 23 years, and so it does take time. And not only does it take time, but Tim Schenk just asked a question, I think, about turnover in Title I staff. So every time you have these relationships built with your partners, they often have staff turnover. So you find yourself in a position where you're having to develop them again. And it can be very challenging. We presented all the really great things that we're doing, but ultimately it comes down to personalities and people that need to be willing to work together. So that can sometimes be a challenge for us, Susan, but we just keep showing up and doing the work and trying to remember what our ultimate goal is, and just always listening to what they need and then sharing with them how we can, what our role is and how we can help them to help their customers meet the goal, and just take it from there.
Thank you so much.
Kelly, that was wonderfully said. The same thing here. Every time somebody new comes to the table, you just have to go start with that relationship building again. And like you said, you just keep showing up. We're very fortunate in our counties here that we have the veteran staff that we have. We do see whenever there's a turnover that it's just educating the new staff on what we need, what they need. It's just building that partnership. It's a constant thing, just constantly working on that. But that was, you said that great.
Thank
I
you.
agree as well. Even though I think I'm the newest one of all of us, and it seems like that, the CareerLink offices that we work with, they're veteran staff, but we're very fortunate of having such interesting people that want to, do what's best for the students. So when I came on, the staff that I have did such a great job and working with them that it just felt very natural. So, but I agree, there is turnover. We're just teaching and learning and doing all of the same things. So, but thank you ladies you did a great job explaining.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to point out just a error on the slide for Kelly Davis's email. So she actually placed her email in the chat. So we'll make that necessary correction. So it's not Lori Como, but her correct email is in the chat for anyone who would like to take it down now. So Amanda, do we have time for me to address the other questions in the chat?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
Well,
All right.
I'll do the incentive funding things late, and we'll keep recording it. So if people need to get off at 12, that's fine. But I think hearing from their colleagues is the most important part of the webinar.
All right, excellent. So there's another question from Rachel. Can you define your percentages for referrals from Title I? Is that participants already enrolled in a Title I program such as OSY or ITA funding, or does that also include walk-ins to the CareerLink who may not be enrolled in a Title I program, but came to the CareerLink for services and needs and HSE?
For us, we were looking at just people who were already enrolled with Title I and participating with Title I, and then were referred to us. The walk-ins we look at separately as just from the outside.
Okay, thank you.
For us, it's the percentage of our overall referrals to our programs from other agencies.
With our program, the referrals I spoke about were just those that were already enrolled in Title I.
Okay, thank you so much. And from Loretta, reducing duplications of services with WIOA core partners is the topic of the Friday lunchtime webinar for tomorrow. Both Seneca and Aaron staff sharing ways that they have built partnerships and worked together to reduce the duplication of services. So those who are available to participate in that webinar, that will be tomorrow. And I think all of the panelists may have addressed Tim's question about turnover. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure. Andrea, did you get a chance to? I know Carol and Kelly have addressing the turnover of Title I staff. If you had that experience.
In the experience that I've had since I've been doing on this for 2 years, we have a lot of veteran staff, and I do not see a lot of turnover right now. So, I mean, that could just be what I see. But right now, like I said, we have a lot of veteran staff there. But I'm sure if we did, we'd just be communicating and educating on what we provide and what they can provide, to work with us.
Okay, excellent. And I think that is all of the questions. A lot of thanks to the panelists for sharing your information. And again, their contact information is there on the slide. Again, Kelly has added her correct email, and we will ensure that the error is corrected. We'll resend out the PDF with that information. And thank you again, panelists, for your time and your responses. Again, very beneficial to your colleagues in the field. And I am going to turn this back over to Amanda.
Yes, thank you, Andrea, Kelly, and Carol for the presentations. And, you know, I know those of you who are listening, you know, these are all three examples of programs being co-located. And I'm sorry, I'm in my office and I have a lot of people around me talking. Is that interrupting you, or can you all hear me okay?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. You know, so there are benefits to co-enrollment, but co-enrollment isn't always possible. But you know, maybe that just means a little bit more investment in your, you know, you're actually going to the Career Link more frequently or something. So, okay, so let me get into incentive funds. Hold on a second. Okay, I yelled at people, sorry. Okay, we got through the, okay, so incentive funds, I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. The incentive funds were determined by data exported from eData on January 1st. I went into eData and exported it sometime late afternoon on the 1st. So that was the data that I used. For adult education programs, we looked at your progress towards contracted enrollment, so your percentage of contracted enrollment, the number of adults with an EFL gain, and we did look at any EFL gain, and the number of adults with high school equivalency attainment, based on a data match with Diploma Sender that I kind of worked through. For family literacy, for those agencies that have both family literacy and adult education, if there were any students who showed up as having a high school equivalency, we put them in the adult ed grant, because there wasn't an easy way to determine whether or not that student was in your adult ed grant or your family literacy grant. For the three agencies that have only family literacy funding, none of the students who showed up in the data match were at your agencies. So we just did not include high school equivalency attainment in the incentive funds for family literacy grant. And that was replaced with the number of families who had 10 or more hours of parenting ed and 15 or more hours of ILA. So those were the criteria that we used to determine the amount. For adult education, first of all, you should have all received, or those of you who are program contacts should have received a corrected funding notification letter yesterday. There was no change to the amount of the incentive funds, but we accidentally, so in the sentence that referred to the amount of your state funds, we accidentally had your entire grant amount, both federal and state. So that has been corrected in the email that went out yesterday. The total amount that we awarded to adult education programs in incentive funds was just below 1.7 million. We had 5 grantees that fell in the 50 to almost 50, 55% enrollment. And then we had 16 grantees that were actually at the 65% plus. We had almost 2,000 adults with an EFL gain, and we had 223 adults with high school equivalency attainment. So, there's good progress there. I do want to point out that this number of EFL gains is, if we look at table 4, is actually below 14%. EFL gains. So we do need, and I understand it's the first half of the year, so a lot of students have not been post-tested, but we definitely need to improve that since our target is 36% for the year. if I looked at the table 4B, which is the number of students who were post-tested, or the number of students who showed an EFL gain over the number of students who were post-tested, it's at 51%, which is low. We actually need it to be about 70% in order for us to be able to meet our target. But nonetheless, there is good progress being made for the fact that we were only halfway through the program year. Oops. Sorry, my mouse is not working. There we go. So for family literacy, we awarded just over 200,000 in incentive funding. We had 7 grantees get a little bit of money for enrollment, and then we had some EFL gains and some families with 10 and 15 hours of parent education and ILA. I'm not sure if I ever explained to you where this funding is coming from. Normally, state funds that are not expended or obligated within a budget year, within a program year, are returned to the general fund. But over the last couple of years, the governor's office, both Wolf and Shapiro, made decisions to do something called a waiver, which allowed the funds to stay with the office. So for us to be able to use in following program years. But it doesn't represent an increase in the funding, right? It's just a pot of money that's available to us, but we're not guaranteed to have it again in the future. So these represent funds that you returned to us or did not expend in 2021, 21, 22, and so it's 2021 and 21, 22. So that's why we're doing it as incentive funding versus a funding increase, because we can't guarantee that the money will be there next year. And that's why it's a one-time expenditure. Okay, the logistics for this. You will have to do a funding adjustment in your current year budget. That will be done in eGrants. Those are not ready for you yet. We're hoping to have them ready either later today or tomorrow. When we create it, the plan is to mark your agency information section approved, the entire federal budget approved, so that you cannot go in and make changes to those. If for some reason those sections are open in your grant and we forget to mark them as approved, please do not go in and make any changes to those. Okay, the only changes you're going to be making in your 064 grant are going to be in the state 064 budget. Family literacy, it'll only be in the budget. To make things a little bit easier, we have created new sections called incentive funds sections. So there's an incentive fund salary, incentive funds benefits sections, so that you don't have to go into the original budget sections and adjust them. You're just going to put the new information in the budget sections. We're going to set a target date to have them submitted by February 9th so that we can get them processed and get the additional funds added to your payments. You do need to obligate the funds by June 30th because they're being added to the current year grant. As I indicated, they're one-time funds. And for those of you who have subgrantees, you should ensure that your subgrantees get a portion of the funding. Please sit down with your subgrantees, look at how they contributed to the incentive funds that you received, and kind of have a conversation about how you distribute that money to them. Okay, the use of the funds, we are not restricting them. We're not saying they have to be used for to buy books or anything like that. They can be used in any way that you use your normal state 064 or your family literacy funds. Some suggestions, given that this is based on your program success, would be to give incentive compensation to staff. That is an allowable expenditure as long as you have some kind of policy, which I mentioned in a prior webinar. we are adding a new object code in the salary section, in the incentive fund salary section called 119, which is specific for bonuses. It's what the chart of accounts is kind of calls additional compensation, and it's for bonuses, incentive funding, etc. So for those of you who are maybe part of an entity that needs to track that separately, we do have that new object code in there specific for incentive funding. In order to enter it in eData, just enter it as 1 hour with the full incentive funding amount. Of course, if you have any questions as you're trying to do this, please feel free to reach out to your advisor about specifics. We would encourage you to use funding to send staff to the PACE conference. It's in Pittsburgh this year. You know, you can definitely use grant funds to pay for the registration. You can use the grant funds to pay for all of the travel costs associated with it. You know, for some of your part-time staff, tutors, this might be an opportunity for them to go to the PACE conference that you normally can't provide them in other years. So I think, and it's a great opportunity for them to network and meet other teachers and tutors and staff members. So that's one recommendation. You know, if you have staff who aren't able to attend the PACE conference, maybe providing them with additional prep or PD time. And then, of course, instructional technology and materials and resources for students. So we're really encouraging you to use the funds to focus on, direct service staff and students, but you are allowed to use them in any way that you would like. As a reminder, yes?
I'm sorry, excuse me. There is a question in the chat. Susan
Okay.
asks, are the funds retroactive to January 1st of this year?
Right. So they are part of your current year grant, right? So yes, you could, if you're going to use this to like charge back a prior charge from earlier in the year, yes. It's part of it's probably actually retroactive to July 1st, 2023. So it covers expenditures from this program year. Sorry, that's a little clearer.
Okay.
Just a reminder, these are things that you're not allowed to do with any of our grant funds. So this is not a restriction we're putting on incentive funds. This is just a reminder of ways that you're not allowed to use grant funds that you normally wouldn't use because you don't have enough to do it, but you might think, oh, here are some things we'd like to do to reward people, but you can't do with our funding. One of those is you cannot cover the cost for high school equivalency testing. As a reminder, you can purchase GED ready vouchers, you can purchase HiSET practice tests, but you cannot use them to pay for someone to take the actual GED test or the HiSET exam. That is not an allowable expenditure with grant funds. Entertainment is not an allowable use of grant funds. So, if you want to have a party or dinners or some kind of take your staff somewhere to celebrate, unfortunately, you cannot use your grant funds or the incentive funds for that. And you're not allowed to use grant funds to cover the cost of a commencement. That is also part of the uniform grant guidance. If those are things that you would like to do and you happen to have local funds that you normally use to supplement your grants. So if you have local funds that you use to pay a portion of your auditing or cover a bit of your rent or things like that, and you would like to use incentive funds to cover those costs, that would then free up your local unrestricted funds in order to be able to do things like this, that would be a reasonable reason to say, okay, we're going to use the incentive funds to pay for an administrative cost or to pay for rent or something like that, because we then want to turn around and use local funds to have a party for our staff or something. In that case, it would be fine because you are using the incentive funds for an allowable expenditure and you're just freeing up local funds. Now, you would not then be able to use those local funds as local match because you're using them for unallowable expenditures. Okay, that's the end of the incentive funding items. Next month's webinar, Christine will show some national data on the effects of post-testing. And a few of your colleagues will discuss factors that help them achieve their EFL gain goals. I believe that is the last slide. Let me check if there are any more questions.
No, doesn't seem there's any more questions in the chat. Tim does. Do you have additional information about the state funds?
So I'm going to ask the second question and then I'll get to yours, Tim. So yes, technology is an allowable, I don't want to say approved because it's not approved until it's submitted to us, but yes, technology is an allowable expenditure. So yes, there is equipment purchases are allowable as long as they support the purpose of the program. The additional state funding to address the funding increase, we are finalizing the plan, not the plans, the guidance that we will provide to you. What I can say is at this point, pending kind of approval from my supervisors, we will be, what I'm anticipating is programs will be able to request up to $100,000. Very limited options for usage. It will be all related to direct service staff and improving, say, converting part-time to full-time staff, things like that. But there isn't nearly as much money as it sounds like, and so there will be a cap on the amount that people can request. So Colleen has a question. The funds have to be obligated by June 30th. No, you cannot budget money and use it in 24-25. You have to use it. I mean, you could pay the bill, but it has to be an expenditure that was done before June 30th. So for staffing, that would mean it has to be staff time before June 30th. If you purchased something in, June and the bill came in July, you could charge it, but it can't be any expenditures after July 1st.
And there's one other.
There's
Mhm.
so for the incentive funds, it's that you're adding funds to your total grant, and so it increases the amount that you can take for administrative costs. I would certainly hope that, unless you're using the costs, the funds for administrative costs there and thereby free up local unrestricted funds in order to, say, have a celebration or pay for high school equivalency tests or something like that. I certainly wouldn't hope you're just taking it for administrative, since the purpose is to really recognize your staff and your students for their successes. But yes, it's exactly the same rules that apply to all of our grant funds. So there is an overall 10% cap on administrative costs when you add the incentive funds in. And then we did have, I think I addressed the funding increase.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There will be more information shared with you once we have the plans finalized.
There's another question, Amanda.
Okay, Myra, I am not, so Myra, the question that someone asked about was different from the incentive funds. So I do not recommend taking the incentive funds that we are giving you and using those to make a teacher full-time, because they are one-time funds. And so you're not going to get, like if you got $24,000 in incentive funds this year, you're not going to get those $24,000 next year. But in addition to the incentive funds, we had an increase in the line item, which we have not sent out. And that would, barring any cut in the state funding, in the budget, that will hopefully be in place for the remainder of the grant cycle. And then the idea would be that that person would remain full-time. For the remainder of the grant cycle. Okay, good. Okay, well, I have taken you 15 minutes beyond your normal end time, so I thank you for remaining on. I wanted to make sure your colleagues had all the time necessary to do their presentation. So thank you very much, and we look forward to talking to you next month.
Have a good day, everyone.